Okay. So again, for those of you who haven't met me, my name is Aileen Martin, and I'm a community consultant with the Prairie Central District for Sport, Culture, and Recreation. We've got a few of our partners on the call today. Bonnie from the Rivers West District and Helen from the Lakeland District. They also partnered with us on this conversation today. And we also have a new special guest today. I'm going to put him on the spot here. We've got Dallas. He's the new summer student with SPRA and works directly with Andrew Exelby in the Parks and Open Spaces. So welcome to the call, Dallas. I'm coming to you today from my home office in Silton, Saskatchewan, which is in beautiful Treaty 4 territory, just on the edge of Last Mountain Lake. And I've been so privy to learn about kind of the land and the valley and the lake and the rich history and heritage that my community as settlers have the blessing to live on. So yeah, I'm happy to be here and happy to present on behalf of our partners and Sask Lotteries. So with that, we've got an amazing conversation today. My apologies for booking this on a Friday. I just picked the day maybe, and that was my error, but hopefully we can continue this conversation and pass on the recording to our friends and neighbors. We've got Grant Wood with I guess he's a retired, I always hate to say when people are retired because it's like we've thrown you out to pasture, but you really are, you're growing and thriving in that pasture, Grant. We've got Grant Wood, who is a university professor, and then we've got Shannon and Coralie that are going to help us out in the remainder of the conversation. So we'll let Grant start, and he's going to kind of give us some of those beyond the bloom, kind of some of those more softer reasonings behind community gardening and a little bit on the mental health side of it. And then the gals we've got a kind of a Q&A on the go with that one, and they'll just kind of share some ideas and open up the discussion on that. So I'm going to hand over the little mic, put myself on mute, and we will pass it over to Grant until about, I think it's about like, yeah, 1:45 or so, Grant, we'll see. And then we'll have lots of time at the end for questions and answers as well. So if you can keep yourself muted for now, and then if Grant, if you do want to answer questions, we can do that as we go or fill them all at the end. I've got Helen and Bonnie keeping an eye on the chat for me, so they can chime in if there's anything that needs to be said from there. And with that, it's all you, Grant.
Okay, now I did this just 2 minutes ago, share screen. I'm going to try it again and see if it works this time. There's the screen, double click. I am such a techno peasant. And participants can now see your screen. So does that look all right? Okay, can people hear me?
Yeah, all good.
And the screen looks okay as is? So that's 2 thumbs up?
2 thumbs up.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you very much, Aileen, for the invitation to speak today. I'm always excited about speaking when it involves mental health and it involves horticulture and plants. I'm going to be talking about urban greening and mental health because the two of them do go very much hand in hand. Let's do it this way. The horticulture major at the University of Saskatchewan has really grown in the last number of years. And why has it grown? Because students are very excited about urban agriculture, about locally growing food. They're excited about managing, protecting the environment, which includes the urban forest, includes our urban green spaces. They're excited about urban landscaping, green roofs, urban pest management, et cetera, et cetera. All of those things combined are urban greening. And that's what the students in essence are excited about, is something called urban greening. So what is urban greening? Well, welcome to New York City, the most populated city in the United States, high densely populated city in the United States. 62% of all of the 9 million people who live in New York live in high density housing like this. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but you live up here You take the elevator down, you walk 5 blocks to that building, work there all day on the 12th floor, take the elevator home at the end of the night, walk 5 blocks up to the 42nd floor, and that's what you see all day long. It's quite a nice view, except it's lacking one thing: life. There is absolutely no sign of green there whatsoever. A couple of years ago, a student who happened to be working in New York sent me a picture, and he said, there's a glimmer of hope, Woody. There's a glimmer of hope. And if you can see, there is a green roof in that building. That's the only sign of life. That's the only sign of greenery that is in that city right now, in that downtown area itself. That is something. People are flocking to cities. They're moving there. 70 years ago, half of Canadians lived in cities and half lived in rural areas. Right now, it's 4 out of 5. 80% of Canadians live in cities, and that number is increasing because people are moving from rural areas into the cities itself. There is a cost to build out urban sprawl. The picture in the bottom right shows urban sprawl. There's a cost, a physical cost to doing that, but there's also a cost to build up high density housing, the high rises. And the two costs are very different. And I will argue that the costs are not just money. It's not just monetary costs involved in this. Why? Because mental health disorders, depression, anxiety in particular, are the primary cause of workplace disability in Canada. Never before have we seen that. Never before have we seen so many people off work due to mental health problems like depression and anxiety. So what's causing all of this problem? What's causing this depression and anxiety? There's lots of factors, but one of those factors, I think, is the high density housing. The lack of greenery, the lack of seeing any life, being cramped into small areas itself. I think that's a very big part of it, as do a lot of researchers. And when I'm talking about mental health disorders and cities, mental health is not restricted to cities. Small town Saskatchewan has lots of examples where we have people who are suffering from mental health disorders. So it's all across the entire province. Love this picture. This is what we were. We had the perfect environment, and we've now morphed that into the high-rise city. The lack of any greenery in the bottom half of the sand. You can't take this and the timer and reverse it, turn it upside down, and make it green again. What we need to do is to work with what we have already built and add greenery back into that. When you ask people, when they look at a city and you ask them what do they see, the first thing they'll say is they see the physical, the built infrastructure. They'll see the houses, the streets, the lighting, the parking. They'll see the sidewalks, et cetera, et cetera. That's what people see when they see a city. But more and more, when we talk to people and ask them what they see when they picture a city, more and more are actually talking about the green infrastructure, the living infrastructure. And why are we doing that? Because 3 decades of research have clearly shown that living green infrastructure has a major positive impact on our life. And that major green infrastructure is urban greening. That's the phrase. So the definition is basically, it's taking our communities and making them more green, more livable, more comfortable, more healthy, more productive. That's what urban greening is. And even though it's the word urban, it's not restricted to just cities. It's cities, towns, any place where people congregate and live. That's what the definition is. It's preserving the green spaces where we live, but also expanding the green spaces where we live, which comes to the predicament. Well, if you want more and more houses because people are moving to cities, but you want more and more greenery, then what has to give? And there is a real predicament here. It's not a new term. We've used the phrase urban greening for hundreds of years in Europe, but at the time, it basically talked about it referred to the street trees and the park trees. Now, when we talk about urban greening, we mean so much more because there's so many more green spaces in communities, including things such as the rooftop gardens and living walls. That's all part of our urban greening. People ask, is urban greening, are towns more green than cities, or are cities more green than towns? And people assume that cities are less green than towns. Well, there's a neighborhood. This is Bona Vista neighborhood in the top left, neighborhood in Saskatoon. That's a very, very green neighborhood. Bottom left is, I forget which which town that is in Saskatchewan, but it's a very green small town. But on the right-hand side, there's another city, another town in Saskatchewan that is not green. So no, all cities, all towns, doesn't matter where, all of them can benefit from urban greening. Wherever you live, we can always add more greenery. What's involved in greening, urban greening? It's green spaces, urban forests, and urban agriculture. What is the definition of an urban space, an urban green space? It's any place where there are plants growing and the plants have utility for the people and for the community. Utility meaning they make the place healthier, happier. They reduce flooding, they clean the air. It's got lots of trees, they feed us. A vacant lot in Herschel, Saskatchewan, full of kochia is not a green space. If that lot had trees in it and the trees were producing food, then yes, that would then become a green space. So it's the utilitarian aspect of it. So it's not just vacant, but there has to be the utilitarian aspect of it. And these vacant lots, this land, the urban green spaces, it can be both private land and it can be public land. It's wherever people congregate for social activities, for recreational activities, or for food. And I've given lots and lots of examples, including cemeteries. Cemeteries are actually very valuable urban green spaces because in most cases, they're heavily treed. So that is a major benefit to people living in the area. So living next to a cemetery is actually a good thing. Urban green spaces have been proven to have physical benefits to people living near them and people who see them and use them. There's over 500 published studies in the US, Canada, and in Europe now, where people who spend time in green spaces, walk through them, have sports in them, and are involved in working in them. And these green spaces also include backyards, front yards. Your personal yard can be a green space because it's often offering utilitarian purposes. If you spend time in these green spaces, it is well documented that they show lower rates of cancer and heart disease, better attention deficit recovery, faster recovery from anxiety, depression, and many, many other benefits. So it's well documented. It's not just one or two research studies. There's over 500 published studies. So we're going to talk about these benefits of these green spaces and how that works. This is kind of one of the big studies that's been done in the US by Harvard University. They looked at the residents' homes and the greenness and mortality, human mortality. They studied, in particular, they studied women, and they looked at women who lived in houses where there was a green space within 250 meters of their house. And they compared that to women who lived in houses where there was no green space within 250 meters of their house. And what they found was, and they had over 100,000 people in the study. And what they found was that there was a 12% lower rate of non-accidental mortality. So women who were living in homes close to green spaces actually lived longer than others. And it's not just living in, but it's living in and using. You've got a park beside you. yes, looking at that park, seeing that park and the greenness of that park, that will be of benefit to you. But actually getting out there and walking around the park itself, or the community garden, participating in it and others, that's where the benefits come in as well, heavily come in. There was a follow-up study to the Harvard one, and that was a Texas one, and that just looking at green spaces, but the activities within those green spaces. And again, it proves that people who were active in these green spaces, walking, socializing, exercising, taking in the nature, they lowers their blood pressure, improves mood, and hastens recovery from stress. And that includes your private yards. Now, that wasn't specified in the Texas study, but it was by another study that came out, and they proved that backyards, front yards, backyards definitely have the same impact. That working in your garden definitely accounts for the better mental health treatment. And there was a third study done, and that said about larger green areas. So that instead of just a little park in the backyard, or just a little park in the neighborhood or your backyard, if there was a much larger green area, the larger the green area, then the more lower the incidence of anxiety and depression. And that is related to the amount of time that you actually spent in these large green areas. The longer you spent in them, the lower the rates of anxiety and depression. So it is quite well documented that there is something here. And it says stimulate all your senses. In particular, one Japanese study that we'll talk about, it's not just seeing, but seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, tasting. All of these can improve your mental health. Exposure to natural soundscapes, like listening to the leaves blowing in trees, or the sound of running water, or the sound of birds, seeing wildlife, seeing biodiversity, not just lawn, but grasses and flowers and ponds and trees. All those combined will help to reduce stress. Okay, I've got a video, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it works, but this is from the American Heart Association. And I want you just to listen and see. Okay. Okay.
Neurologists are shocked.
They
have found that tinnitus.
Okay, going back to this one. Okay, I wish we were face to face, because I just a show of hands. Who actually read the words, and how many of you actually were just totally mesmerized by the sound of the red cardinal singing, the sound of the running water, the sound of the wind blowing through the leaves? Most people didn't even read. It's that you have to watch it 2 or 3 times to realize what this talking about. But it's the sounds and that nature, being within nature, that is very, very much helpful in reducing stress. So I love that video, because it kind of proves it's not the words, not the process, but it's the nature itself that does that. The American Psychological Association, they say, how do you de-stress? How do you manage your stress? One of the best things they say, walking in green spaces is a very effective way of just de-stressing. The Journal of Outdoor Recreation, it's a Finnish study. They say that how do you de-stress? There's a correlation, a very definite correlation between green spaces and the level of physical activity. Basically, what they're saying is build a forest or a green space, throw some trails in there, or a sports field, and people will show up. And when they show up, they will use those fields, they will use those trails, and they will be healthier because of it. So the first place in mind that comes to mind when I think, okay, build a forest or a green space with trails and people will show up. So did they do that when we created the Meewasin Valley Authority and the Meewasin Valley in Saskatoon? You know, the valley is listed here. You're walking through heavily treed forested areas. You're walking through trails with greenery, open greenery with the river right there. You can use the trails year round. Over 100 kilometers. The trail itself from the north end, which runs from Wanuskewin Heritage Park to the very, very south end to the dog park, Chief Whitecap Dog Park on the south end, on both sides of the river. The trail itself is over 100 kilometers long. So if I had a question is, you know, we have counters, we put counters up there now so that log the number of people going by. And when you ask people, well, how many people actually walk that trail, walk, bike, hike, drive, you know, walk by that trail? Well, you know, lots. You know, you see people all the time. You know, I don't know, a couple, maybe 100,000 a year go up and down that. No, it's a few more than that actually. Last year, 2.3 million uses on the Meewasin Trail last year. That's how many we logged in. And that's with 5 counters. My wife and I walk almost every day on the Meewasin Trail. And the area we walk in doesn't have a logger on it. And this morning, my walking partner, this morning we saw probably 25, 30 people on the trail when we're out walking, and none of those were logged. So I mean, yeah, that trail is extremely well used. And that is of benefits for mental health and physical health. The other thing that is there's the correlation between green space and there's something called social cohesion. By definition, the International Journal of Environmental Research Public Health Study said that the green spaces, if you have green spaces, that will encourage positive social interactions. You build a park, you put some trails in there, you put a few trees, benches underneath, people are going to come. They're just going to be enhanced to that area itself. And when they get together, they're going to socialize. They're going to become part of a community and they're going to build that community. And that's what social cohesion is. In particular, it's the recreation trails. You put a trail there, people are going to start walking, biking, and they're going to be interacting. You put a sports field. The kids are playing sports. The parents don't just sit there. They interact with each other. And that is building the community, and they react that way. So the urban green spaces and communities and community cohesion go hand in hand. Saskatoon, well known for that. The top right here, the Donna Burkmeyer Park, over in the northeast corner or east side of the city, sorry. Walking trails, lots of walking trails. There's water over in this side here. There's sports fields over here. We've got disc golf, big sporting disc golf. We've got soccer, we've got baseball, and we've got lacrosse fields just over in this area, and a couple kilometers worth of walking trails. And you can use it year round. Right across the street south of that is Hyde Park. Hyde Park is the natural area with the retained water beds in it. About a couple kilometer walking trail around that as well. So we purposefully create these and put them in the communities, and people just flock to that area so they can become community. There's something called the community pocket parks. These are fairly large parks. I wouldn't call these a pocket park at all. They're fairly large, but this is a pocket park. It's designed to be used by the people in the immediate community. They just go out to the back. And they're very, very popular now in Saskatoon. This one's out in Rosewood. They're not large. As you can see, it's not a large thing, but there's a trail system for kids with little kids biking. You've got trees in the area. You've got a play structure area. You've got benches to sit on. And as people are walking around and sitting on the benches, they're socializing. And that is definitely helping to create community. And these are proven very, very effective for social cohesion within communities. The second part about them, the urban areas, green spaces, is the urban forests. And they're not forests as such, they're treed area, with the urban treed area. We have over 110,000 trees in our urban forest. And that's trees owned and maintained by city. And those are on industrial, those are on, like on city-owned land, on parks and schools, et cetera, et cetera. But we've also got trees on residential yards along the river valley itself and institutional lands like the university. Our 110,000 trees, that's not included. The university trees are not included in that. In fact, it's estimated that 60% of all trees in Saskatoon are not part of this 110,000. So in essence, we're saying that we've got about 250,000 trees in Saskatoon. Trees are, everything green is important, but if there is one thing that's a little bit more important, I would say trees are it. Because trees are, they are very effective in absorbing the carbon dioxide and giving off the oxygen that we breathe in and absorb the carbon dioxide that we breathe out. They're very, very, very effective. They control temperatures. They regulate the temperatures within cities itself, which is extremely important. We have, right now, we've got about 10% of our city is covered by trees. There's a group working very hard in Saskatoon that want to double that to 20% by the year 2060. In most European cities, the mean average is 30%. So we've got a long way to catch up to them. But we are doing a good job of treeing and putting trees in the city itself. There is something called medical school in Harvard School. They use a Japanese tree therapy. And this Shinrin Yoku, and it's been used throughout Japan for hundreds and hundreds of years. What it is it's walking through a forest, visualization of tranquil scenes and green spaces. So you're walking through this forest. It's not a give or snooze and come out the other end sweating type of exercise. This is a slow walk and absorb. You want to make sure you use all your senses. So it may, it's recommended 15 to 30 minutes 3 times a week. 15 minutes may not take you very far into the forest itself, but as you're listening, you're smelling, you're hearing sounds, you're tasting, you're feeling, you're absorbed by the trees around you. That is proven to be a major de-stressor. And like I say, it's been used in Japan for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's all throughout the US now and into Canada. Some people, there are organizations that say, take your forest pill. Make sure you take your forest pill. And that's what the forest pill is this 15 to 30 minutes, 3 times a week, just slowly going through the forest. So what do we, I want to get rid of this thing over there. Yeah. So what do we want to do? How can we recreate that? Well, we live in a province where there's lots and lots of land. And every small town, every regional park should have a forested area, not necessarily quite as big as this, as the previous one, but a forested area where you can go along trails and immerse yourself in the greenery. Poplar trees are just as effective as at de-stressing as our conifers, so it doesn't have to be a northern Saskatchewan forest. It can be the local forest itself. And just walking through these forests definitely can help de-stress people living in the small towns right beside or in the regional parks itself. I would love to see regional parks do that. Okay, and then the last thing, my absolute dear thing is urban agriculture. I live for urban agriculture. Agriculture, there's a definition of agriculture, there's a definition of urban agriculture. The only difference is one's inside the cities and one's not. It's basically the same thing as growing things outside, growing things inside the cities for food inside the cities. You'll often see the word urban market gardeners, and those are people who are involved in urban agriculture inside the cities. The difference between them, scale and outcomes. You know, we use backyards, we use front yards to grow food. We're not talking 160 acres. We're not talking 3,000 acre farms in the city. We're talking 300 square foot yards in the city where we're growing food. A recent study of farmers, prairie farmers, asked them, why do you farm? Why do farmers farm? And the number one response was land stewardship. Someone has to take care of the land. We're the ones responsible for doing that. To produce safe, environmentally friendly food, to feed a hungry world, and to make a living. Those were the main responses. There's an urban gardener. There's an urban gardener in his urban garden. When you ask urban gardeners, well, why do you garden? What drives you? There's an emphasis on responses on physical health, on mental health, food security, quality of food, choice of food, and just control over how their food is produced. Those were the 5 most commonly used or quoted reasons why gardeners garden. Urban agriculture is not in competition with rural agriculture. We grow different crops altogether for the most part. We grow different crops for the most part, and we are marketing to different people inside the cities. So it's not the same. We're not in competition with rural areas. Urban agriculture is about food security. It is about food production. Here we have a street and we have pretty pink trees. Those pretty pink trees, you know, bloom right just, you know, in a couple of weeks they'll be blooming. Well, instead of having pretty pink trees, how about we have a pretty white flowering tree in your front yard? A pretty white flowering tree in your front yard that happens to produce apples. This is an example of Honeycrisp. So how about instead of planting the pink ones, we plant the white ones that give us apples. So let's look at the town of Southey. Just picked it out of the blue, 356 lots in the town of Southey. If every one of those lots grew 1 apple tree in their yard, and if you got 30 pounds of apples per tree, which is very, very easy to do, that would mean you would get 10,680 pounds of apples, or 5 tons of apples could be harvested in Southey. What would you do with 5 tons of apples? Well, I would have an apple pie festival or an apple crisp festival. And I would have the PCD SCR district, you know, I would have the coordinators making apple pies, advertising, people flocking to Southey to taste these amazing apples, pies made from locally grown apples, which are being sold. And it just draws people and it emphasizes, hey, we're just a little town, but look what we can do, you know, based on food. Just throwing that one out there. These are all acceptable ornamental shrubs. There's pretty blue ones, yellow ones, and white ones. Which one would you like? I'd like them all, but which one did I put in my backyard? I put the one with the pretty white flowers. Why? Because those pretty white flowers produce dwarf U of S sour cherries. In fact, 40 pounds of cherries per shrub is what came out. And at that yield, you would get about, you know, with time, if the town did that, Southey did that, they could harvest 14 tons of dwarf U of S sour cherries. That's more than a pie fill contest, 14 tons. That's a lot of cherries. That is a wine industry. That is a commercial industry, commercial food industry. That is just amazing. And if you don't want dwarf U of S cherries, you can do the Haskaps, you can do Saskatoon, or any one of a number of other producing fruits in the city that can be grown in small town Saskatchewan. It's referred to as edible landscaping. They're pretty to look at, plus they produce food. Edible landscaping, ornamental gardening is another phrase. I mean, how many would plant their lettuce and use different color lettuces and different textures in their yard just to make it look absolutely ornamental? This is straight old Cost romaine lettuce. This is Scaramanga lettuce, that dark orange. Imagine a salad with just those two. Throw some yellow tomatoes in there, throw an orange carrot in there, and some flowers off of Johnny Jump Ups. You've got an absolutely stunning salad now, and the taste begins with the eye. You know, if it looks good, it's going to taste now good too. Here we've got the we've got ornamental landscaping. Here we've got kale, we've got cabbages, we've got chard, we've got peppers, we've got, there's a few other ornamental edible things in here. All these things, you know, put your food producing crops in your landscape, or a very, very easy herb garden, just like this. You know, it looks amazing. Okay, so let's go back to Southie. 356 lots. If every one of those lots grew a garden and it was 10 pounds and grew, 100 pounds of vegetables, that's a 10 foot by 10 foot, that's a pound per square foot of garden. Easy to do. We would harvest 35,600 pounds. If that was potatoes, we would harvest 35,600 pounds of tomatoes in the town of Southie. Canadians on average eat 130 pounds of table stock potatoes per year, not fries or anything processed, just straight raw potatoes. On average, they eat 130 pounds a year. Based on the 35,000 pounds, that means that we could feed 270 people, or approximately 1/3 of the town of Southie. We could produce enough potatoes to feed 1/3 of the population of Southie potatoes for the entire year. I mean, so yes, urban agriculture is about food, but it's a lot about a lot more than just food. And that is the therapy aspect of it. We know that there are many benefits, and your mood, your mental health, just seeing gardens, just being in around the gardens and working in the gardens definitely reduces your mental health and depression. Gardens are a source of relaxation if you do it right. If you do it wrong, they are a source of stress. And it's just basically, it's starting too big and getting too big too fast. You know, and just because you love gardening doesn't mean you need to start off with a 100-foot, a 4,000 square foot garden. You know, that will cause you to drink very quickly. So start off with a small garden and enjoy it for what it's worth. And then if you want, you can get bigger. You know, you don't have to fill the entire yard. This is coming from the person who needs 12, who needs 12 tomato plants, who has 342, I think, plants now started. Yeah, what am I going to do? Why? You know, why do I do this to myself every year? But yeah, so gardening is beneficial for mental health, and it's also food. It gives you food to eat, and that can be a stress releaser right there alone. Gardeners are well known for having a better diet. You grow it, you eat it. Commercially, you would never buy those. Commercially, those are never available on the market. Why? Because they're deformed. So they taste the same as carrots. If you grow them in your home yard, you're going to eat them. And well documented that gardeners have a better diet. According to Health Canada, half your plate should be fruits and vegetables, and you eat things that look just like that because you grew them, you know where they came from. So we have better physical health. This is my backyard. This is my house on the right-hand side. I have my vine tomatoes here. So I'm standing on the deck. I reach around the corner and I can pick my tomatoes off the vine over here. I can't drive any further down because my entire driveway is full of tomatoes growing in pots. And then I park the car is first south of that. And as I walk along the front of the house, I can grab a few more tomatoes from the flower bed in front of the house. That is called food feet, not food miles, which we talk about. This is food feet. And that's another reason that we can, we should be growing more vegetables because we can, and it feels really, really good harvesting vegetables like that. In particular, these yellow pear tomatoes, they're amazing. Community gardens. I'm an absolute fanatic and fan of community gardens. They are just wonderful things. What is a community garden? It's a parcel of land that is tended by people or a group of people or individually or as or communally, either individually or communally, for personal consumption and or donation. We have community gardens in Saskatoon. Some of them are, this is your plot of land, you grow what you want on it. But there's also community gardens where this is our garden. Collectively, we're going to grow stuff here. Collectively, we're going to share what we grow from the garden. And then there's some that have your parcel of land, but we also have 6 plots over here, which we all will help maintain. And that all food from those 6 communal gardens go into the inner city area to help less privileged in the community. So we have all combinations of that. They're private land. There's over 60 gardens now in the city. And the demand is just every year we get 3 or 4 more because the demand just grows and grows and grows. They're either private land or public land. Churches, vacant lots are biggies. The benefits from community gardens are many, and they're very well studied because they're easier to study than working individually. We work with groups. They build communities. That's the one thing that they are known for. They bring people together. They bring people together. And when you bring a whole bunch of people together, there's a sharing. There's the sharing of food, the sharing of learning, experience, the sharing of culture. And that is working together that helps to build that community. Together as a community, we can do great things, such as the donation garden. We can actually help those in our community who need food and don't have access to it. And because of that, working together, you get a sense of belonging. We all belong here, kind of thing. And that's a big part of it. Community gardens give you food access, both for yourself, and that's a self-confidence thing. I work with various community gardens, and I work with drug and alcohol rehab program, and the young guys I work with, they grow vegetables, and at the end of the year they harvest the vegetables. And one in particular, I will always remember that we harvested the tomatoes, we harvested the herbs, we harvested the onion, we harvested the garlic, we brought it back in the kitchen, and he made a pasta sauce. And he's snarfing this stuff down. And I finally went over and said, okay, talk to me. What's happening? Talk to me. He said, I did this. I did this. I said, yes, you did. Here, give me a hug. Self-confidence. That was the first time he realized that he can do things. And that's what you get from community gardens. That's what you get from that gardening kind of thing. Demonstration plots. Community gardens are wonderful for demonstration plots, in particular if you've got a multi-generational or intergenerational or a multicultural gardens. Is that the people will, wow, I've got to get going here. People will share more than anything else. Gardeners nurture plants. Gardeners also nurture other gardeners. If you see someone in the community garden who's doing something that's not working, they're having trouble, you're not going to just sit and watch them and then walk away. If you're a gardener, you're going to walk over there and help them. And that's how you build community. Plus, it's social contact. In particular, seniors in the communities that are lonely. I have nothing to do today. What do I do? Get a spot in a community garden. Now you have to go to the community garden to take care of your plants every day. And that's how you meet people. That's how you socialize. It's a huge, huge issue. I love this one, talking to younger gardeners. Okay, on the far right, we have this thing called a beet. Well, what do you do with a beet? Well, you chop the green stuff off and then you throw it away and you eat the root. All right, this is called Beta vulgaris. Down here at the bottom, we have this thing called chard. By the same name, actually, Beta vulgaris. Chard and beet are the exact same plant. This one, the beet, was selected for a root. Chard was selected for leaves. So you don't take beets and chop the top part off and throw that out and eat the root. You eat the leaves of beets. And the reason is because there's more nutrition per unit weight in the leaves than there is in the roots. If anything, chop the top part off, eat it, and throw the root out. You know, and that's what you do with chard. Or you make something like this, holopsy, but some really cool looking holopsy. Just blanch them and roll them up. Instead of using cabbage, use chard leaves and add the color. You know, you want to feel better about your cooking. You want to feel better about yourself. Serve that to your guests. Man, oh man, I tell you, they're going to be really, really happy with you if you do that. How much more time do I have?
We'll give you like 2 minutes because these are my favorite slides here.
Oh, rats. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just going so.
That's okay, Grant.
Yeah. I am very fortunate that we were able to work with a lot of immigrant families in Saskatoon, and it's such a reward. It's well published that community gardens and immigrant families and refugees the benefits of these gardens are huge for them. And as a friend said once about, gardening reminds me of the time when I was at home, before I was known as a foreigner. And if there's one take-home message, please do not use the F word. We don't use the word foreigner. That is a degrading phrase. We use the phrase refugees, immigrants, or newcomers, but not foreigners, okay? So just remember that one. But yes, people move from other countries. They come with their culture and that's all they come with. And everything is different here than at home. And they have to adjust to absolutely everything. And that's really, really hard. Gardening is the one thing they can do. They can grow stuff just like they did at home, and you can make your new home here just like, or a little bit more like your old home, because you can garden here just like you did at home. So gardening and community gardening and the immigrant families, absolutely important. And it connects the newcomers to the community and it helps them feel like they are part of the community. And the other thing is, I work with a group on campus with newcomers, and you do not want to miss the potluck suppers. You never want to miss those because you have no idea what's coming up. Red amaranth, it's an Indian thing. We grow this plant here. You've had quinoa, this is a first cousin. You've had amaranth, first cousin. Pigweed, first cousin. This one on the right called purslane. You're starting to, I see people shuddering, yes, portulaca, the thing that scarred children for generations in Saskatchewan, get out to the garden and weed the garden, pick every piece of that portulaca, don't leave it, it'll spread, Well, that is sold on the streets of India as a vegetable because portulaca is edible. If you just Google the phrase purslane dal, D-A-L, and you'll get recipes on how to cook portulaca before it flowers. Very, very edible. The Mayo Clinic says, hey, if you got stress, there's lots of ways you can de-stress, such as get active, gardening, eat a healthy diet, gardening, connect with others, like in a garden plot in a community garden, forest therapy, relaxation, take up a relaxing hobby like gardening. Gardening is a really proven way to de-stress, and it's good therapy. It's very, very therapeutic. Plus, you get a beautiful, tasty salad. And this is the salad that we grow on the rooftop garden that we use for feeding staff on campus. So any other questions now or questions at the end? I'm around all the time, so.
That was awesome, Grant. Oh, I think I'm frozen. No, maybe I'm not.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
good.
that was amazing. I didn't even realize how much that conversation would tie into. It is Mental Health Week in Saskatchewan, so it's really fitting that we had these conversations today about the not only the physical but also the mental benefits of gardening. So I think we'll hold questions for a bit because this is probably the longest that Shannon and Coralie haven't talked for the day. So I'll get you to stop sharing your screen, Grant. And I think my plan will be, I will try to, I'll pin myself, Shannon and Coralie, and maybe I can help you with the stop share. Oh, yeah, there we go. I'll pin Shannon and Coralie and myself, and we're just gonna do a really kind of fluid, interviewee kind of style conversation. And if just a second, I'm just seeing here, if I spotlight for everyone, add spotlight, add spotlight. There we go. Bonnie, is that the three of us on the screen for everybody? Perfect. Okay. So yeah, girl, you can unmute yourselves and just go wild here now. So we did come up with a couple of just kind of some starter questions and random things just to kind of get the conversation going. Before we do that, I'm going to let Coralie say 2 sentences to introduce Shannon, and then Shannon can say 2 sentences to introduce Coralie, and then we will go from there onto your garden spaces. All right, go for it.
Awesome. Everyone can hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect. Shannon Marshall is extraordinary Wonder Woman in the city of Melfort, keeper of many trades and ideas, works in the recreation department and very influential throughout their communities in bloom and many other organizations within the community. So she has a wealth of knowledge for you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Coralie. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I'll tell you what, I started in recreation field in August of 2018. I met Coralie at SBRA that fall, I think October of 2018, and we went to a rec meeting and I latched onto her right away. So everything that she just described is because I strive to be more like Coralie every day since I met her. She is the keeper of all the knowledge in recreation. If there is ever a question that you need, that is the girl that you turn to. From day one, she has been my main resource for everything. So I work in rec and aquatics. She is rec and sport. If you have a question, she's a girl that knows. You want to get something done, ask a busy person, ask Coralie, because that's how we get things done in our field for sure.
Sweet. Thanks for
Thank
that,
you.
ladies. Okay, so both the 2 ladies here have 2 different kind of community gardens. One of them is raised gardens and the other is in ground. So Shannon, can you tell me a little bit about your community gardens in Melfort?
Yeah, you bet. So I have to say that Grant's presentation was awesome. And it's a good thing my camera's off because I was zipping through notes like crazy. And one of my favorite things was when he was talking about the newcomers in town, and gardening is a common language amongst all cultures. That is where we can find common ground no matter who we are. So I can wear 2 different hats in this ring too, because I'm actually with our communities in bloom. So in spring of 2019, we actually wrote a co-op community spaces grant and was awarded and allocated money to build our community garden. So we built in our Spruce Haven Recreation Park across kind of to the west of our Spray Park playgrounds. This Spruce Haven Park is a huge, massive green space we have in our community. There's an empty plot of land, and we asked the city as Communities in Bloom if they would be open to us opening up community gardens there, and we built 30 raised beds. Now, so because this is with Communities in Bloom, they are rentable space. So for $30 or $40, you can have different bed sizes, and we have 30 to rent. Those went up in 2019, and they have been consistently rented throughout. And even this year, planting hasn't started, and we only have about 8 beds left to rent for the season. And it's been absolutely wonderful. We love the raised bed area, and it's brought in so many positive things to our community that we've seen throughout.
And Coralie, what about your guys' space?
Our community garden started many moons ago with 10 plots behind one of our waterworks building. They are all in-ground spots, and it has grown. We were gracious enough to have the co-op grocery store and gas station industry or business in town donate us land behind their gas stations. So we have an additional 46 in-ground plots there as well. They originally were given on first come first served basis each year. We have since gone in the last couple of years to returning gardeners getting to get their same spots. Again, the city administers and sort of looks after all of the community gardens. We till them in the spring. And I don't want to answer the questions before we get to them. Anyways, we till them, we stake them, we take all the names, we assign all the plots, and we do all of that as a city. We did at one time have a gardening group. They've sort of all disbanded about 15 years ago, and we saw the value in it. So we just continued to take it on as a city project or program.
Yeah. So when we were talking earlier on planning this, I think it was you, Shannon, that maybe mentioned that your garden plots, you had them in a different variety of spaces. Do you want to explain kind of why you selected kind of the spots that you did?
So I think Coralie actually has hers. Ours are all just in kind of that one Spruce Haven Park area. Coralie's got hers throughout different parts of the community. However, I will chime in before I flip it over to her quickly. Our curtain gardens are located on our east side of our community. Now, we're not a big city, you know, 6,000 people. But we are looking to do one on the south side of our community too. I mean, they've gotten so popular. But when you talk about seniors or maybe a different socioeconomic demographic, maybe somebody that doesn't have access to transportation, east and south, even in a smaller community, is a fair distance away. So we're looking at putting a second plot on our south side of our community, just so we have them in different areas. But I think, Coralie, you have them in 2 different spots, correct? Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, we have our smaller plot, sort of more central community. And we tend to try to always give those to the seniors that are in that area, because we have a number of seniors complexes near there. And then our other one is farther up in our north. But just following up on what Shannon said, we are looking to expand our gardens throughout our community. I just don't want accessibility to ever be an issue. And so I'm always in the belief of, let's not make the people come to us, let's go to the people. So I'm just kind of starting to get that ball rolling. We've had a little bit of kickback from our community. So if you guys have kickback from people, we just need to make sure we have our facts. And I think Grant's presentation has a lot of amazing facts that if we have some people who are opposed to community gardens in their neighborhood, there's so many positive facts that we can pull together for a report. So that's what we're looking to do, is pull together all the positives and find the land and, like I said, get more spots out to the people in our community.
Yeah, that's awesome. Making that inclusion and access so that everybody can have that space and make that space theirs. So let's talk a little bit about the actual kind of construction of the boxes, kind of what you've used to build the boxes, and some kind of pros and cons around weed control.
I can actually start there if you want. So we actually did ours just out of a treated lumber because we were funded through the co-op. We went right to the co-op and said, look, we're looking to build raised garden beds, and especially because they are community beds, we didn't want to do just a 1x2 piece of lumber or a 2x, like we wanted big, like healthy, substantial beds. So there was something we could build and kind of walk away from and not have to worry about for a significant amount of time because they are raised. So they sold us the lumber. I don't even know what size. They have to be at least a 4x6, a 6x6 board, a couple stack ties. So they're not they're not really tall, really deep, but they're a good substantial size, something that and they're wide enough so that people, if they want to sit on them, that's a comfortable spot to kind of sit and garden. So that's what ours are constructed out of. And again, when we talk about weed control, so ours went on just a plot of land in the park. They kind of, they brought out, I think it was, I don't know what it was, a bobcat, and just kind of scraped the ground. So we were right on, soil. That's what they were built on. Then we went to we have a compost center here in our community where when they chop down trees out of different parks that are dead or dying or green golf course or whatever. they actually get mulched into wood mulch that our community can access and use for free. So we actually just mulched in between our beds for the time being, something that could eventually compost down into the ground. It would be good for the earth. However, what we have discovered is weeds thrive in wood mulch. They love it. And so we were having issues with weed suppression, or just kind of keeping the weeds under control. And for the gardeners, from Communities in Bloom standpoint, that was something that was pretty important to us, because when you're gardening, weeds are your foe, not your friend always, unless it's purslane. Who knew that that was edible? But that's not what we were growing for weeds. So this Saturday, Communities in Bloom is getting together. We've actually had some farmers come and they donated grain bags. We're going to lay those just simply right over the wood mulch, because it's fairly level, compacted, because it's stomped down throughout the season, and put pea gravel. City Melfort's going to donate pea gravel. We're going to go out and put pea gravel on over top, just to help with the weed suppression that we currently have.
Nice. And Coralie, yours, what are some kind of pros and cons of yours being tilled right into the ground?
So the city, it's easier to get fertilizer and manure and stuff in. So the city has every couple of years gotten some good manure and fertilizer and put it in. It's easier to work it in. We have the same weed issues as well. So we ask our gardeners to not only weed their plot, but the area sort of directly adjacent. We do have some issues every year with weeds, but one of our biggest problems right now is potato bugs. So we have let everyone know that there are potato bugs, and that we advise them not to plant potatoes, and that they will get potato bugs if they insist on planting potatoes. So it's sort of the weed and the bug issue. We try to also keep it as organic as possible, so we don't, we discourage, we tell people not to use any chemicals on their plots, so that, a little bit of breeze or whatever, even some water, might move that chemical into someone else's plot. So we're trying to, and for the most part, I believe everyone's abiding by it, sort of a chemical-free site. We don't spray like Roundup or anything in there. Everything is organic when we do weed or pest control that we do. So that's ours. But yeah, it's much easier to throw some manure or fertilizer or whatever. We tend to get manure right off the farm, which of course does bring more weeds. Yeah. But it's a more natural way of fertilizing your property. We're right now working with Loris in Saskatoon to get some compost out. So we're hoping to be able to get that out in the next week, finish tilling it and have it ready to go.
I think that is one thing, Coralie, with yours in ground and mine raised. I'll never forget the one summer we were like, we should get these beds tilled again. And we literally Communities in Bloom hauled a huge tiller up, and it was like, this is insane. Like, but once you start planting vegetables in that soil, and each garden plot person is pretty good at amending their soil. Like if you rent a new plot that wasn't yours last year, you see people out there bringing their own amendments in, because they, and you know what, the soil eventually gets healthier. We have added manure to ours too, but that did bring in definitely some weeds. But it's just kind of part of the process. So as those beds get amended on a continual basis, that soil just gets like better and better. It was good earth that we brought in initially for it, but tilling for ours is not an easy option by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, and that's why we opted to go from random choice each year to allowing gardeners to return to their plots, just simply because people had brought in and amended their soil and then were disappointed when they had to move even one plot over. So that's why we opted to go to returning gardeners to continue with their plot, and we haven't had any kickback from it yet. So I'm just really hoping we continue to be able to expand our spaces so that everyone who wants one can get something.
You bet.
So let's follow that and like segue into kind of that like administration and the back end of it, because they're both, it sounds like Shannon, yours is more a Communities in Bloom program that's supported by the city, whereas the city of Warman kind of administers all of that. And so I do have handouts and stuff that I can share that the gals have shared with me that I can send out after. But yeah, just a little bit of that like back end stuff, because it has to start somewhere.
Do you want to start, Coralie, on that one?
Sure, I can. First of all, I'll let everybody know that our plots are all 10 feet by 18 feet. and they cost $15 a year to rent. And then we charge a $20 deposit for our water keys, because we just have a water key that's used to access water. Both the co-op gas station and the city of Warman donate all the water to the plots each year. So $15 doesn't go very far if we're out tilling, staking, administration, and water. So it's a great deal, but we want to continue to ensure that it was an accessible program for those who wanted it in our community, especially because in the very beginning, the majority were seniors. And we saw the value in that recreational experience for them and the improvement in the mental health. So that's why we always continue to keep it at an affordable rate. So the city advertises it and begins taking applications onto the list, March, April sometime. We do have a contract, which I think I've shared with Aileen. If not, I'll make sure I get it to you that you guys can send out. Yeah, we have some promotion pieces. So yeah, we contact each returning gardener now. If they want their spot, they get it. If not, it just goes and we do a random draw from there. We had about 25 people for 14 additional spots this year. So I'm really hoping to get 10 or 20 at least more spots in the community. I think that number will grow if we can get it into the neighborhoods versus making people drive all the way over here to the north end. Yeah, so they're allocated by random draw. We till, we stake. Also our garden out behind our co-op gas station is sort of just an open area. So we actually have Super Safe Fencing who has donated fencing to fence that area off. There was a time where we actually even locked it because people were going in and stealing gardening or stealing fruits and vegetables, and not those that really needed it. It was just kids causing a mess and a problem. It's been better the last couple of years, but it is all fenced off. The city runs hoses for our big garden behind the co-op gas station. So there's a main line that comes across the roadway from the building. It's all matted over top, and then we run different sections of heavier kind of gardening hose, and then people can come in and attach their garden hose for their plots. But we run all of that hose above ground each year. Each spring we lay it down and pick it up every fall. What else can I tell you? Pretty much everything is just information wise sent out on the paperwork that I have for Aileen, so she can send you all that stuff.
Perfect. So ours is Communities in Bloom, but the city, so we needed somewhere to do that financial transaction, and the city of Melfort was good enough to jump on board with Communities in Bloom, and we really do work hand in hand, both those organizations together. Like Communities in Bloom wouldn't be what it was without the support of the city. That's really like key part of that relationship. So they take people rent the plots, but do the financial transaction at City Hall. So we have a place to kind of exchange those finances, and then they just put that aside in an account for Communities in Bloom. Because we do, Communities in Bloom does pay for kind of like the upkeep of the space. I mean, we've added a gazebo. There's a welcome gate that we added to that space, and that is Communities in Bloom's fee. That we pay for that. Our plots or our bed spaces are $30 or $40, $10 deposit for, like Coralie said, a water key. And then we do supply 100-foot hose at the water access. They would bring their own water handle and any of their gardening shovels, rakes, whatever you kind of need to garden. Those gardeners do have to bring that. So the financial transaction is done at our city, but the city just takes those funds and turns them right back over to Communities in Bloom, which part of that money goes back then to the city for maintenance and upkeep that we do at the garden space. But it's, yeah, we're pretty lucky to have the city, and the city, we don't mind doing it because there's so many benefits of those gardens to our community.
We also provide waste bins as well at each of our locations. So people who do not have a vehicle, again, can just leave their weeds and stuff there without having to haul them all home. Yeah,
I think that that's key to making that space work for sure too.
Yeah.
We found that adding a gazebo, not everybody's lucky enough to do that in their garden spaces. Ours, again, is just of such a large nature. We were able to, so we fundraised, Communities in Bloom fundraised and raised the money to add a shade, like a gazebo with picnic benches and stuff, so that there's like shelter to seek for shade there while you're gardening, because it does get hot in the dead heat of July, even though it doesn't feel like it in most of our communities today.
So Grant talked a little bit about kind of those intergenerational or intercultural kind of connections. Have you guys done any kind of programming around your gardens? Like, have you hosted like preserve classes or how to prune classes or any of that stuff?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, Aileen, like that you say that. So we basically built our community gardens the first year. They were super hot, super popular, and the city's mind was spinning with what we could do, and Communities in Bloom was spinning, and then COVID hit, and it was like, crap. But community gardens are one of those things that you could still do at a distance outside and be social and active. So they remained busy. Now, as far as doing like presentations or community events, we're just starting to kind of delve into that now that we, live and we have no restrictions. So Communities in Bloom hosts a fall festival in that same park that our community gardens are in every fall. So that's becoming popular. And we are toying with the idea of doing like largest vegetable growing competition. Do you know what I mean? But it doesn't have to come for community gardens necessarily. Preserving classes we talked about. Communities in Bloom has actually gone to schools and done presentations to the kids on food sustainability, growing your own food, what that looks like, what's easy to grow. If you don't have a garden space, how you can rent one, or growing food in pots and stuff. So it does work into community education for sure. When you say social aspect, I love our community gardens because when you go out and see them and you see people in their like early 20s just kind of starting out and they think it's, this pretty cool. And then you have people that are like in their 70s or 80s, and the social mix that you get with those two demographics, it's just so awesome to see. And the knowledge that gets passed on from different generations about gardening, you see it all at the community gardens. I love it. And actually the newcomers, I think that's a space that they feel they can really, that's where you can connect. If you can connect with somebody, you connect with them at the community gardens. It's really cool to see. Ours, we're really lucky, our location, because our skate park is to the north, our splash park playground is to the south, huge green space to the west. So it's really kind of a hub in the community, but I think the community gardens helps bring that full circle where it's all those age demographics can play together in the same space.
Cool.
So there actually used to be a garden behind our high school, which we had a kind of a youth group that looked after it. And so they offered some classes at that point. Last year, we actually had our summer fun program have a plot at our location. So they got to grow some stuff, teach all the kids. We have done preserving classes, and we actually have preserving video for, I think it involves salsa. That we'll put out as well this year again. And the school has also used it. They've gone over and used a plot as well. For the past 3 years, we also did take-home garden kits. And so kids would actually get it was kind of like a cloth garden bag. And we would give them seeds for lettuce and tomatoes and peppers. And so they were able to kind of grow their own salad right on their deck. Reason we did them in a smaller kind of bag is so those, again, who don't have large spaces could still grow enough stuff to have a few salads throughout the year. And then again, we would complement that with those preserving videos at the year and things that they can do with them. So we didn't do the take-home gardens this year, but we're really hoping to do more of that virtual kind of things on how to do things this year. So we are trying to, flip it into some more programming as well.
Here's the thing, if you guys have time, the possibilities of what you can do for your community to get people to interact in a community garden are endless. You just have to have time to facilitate it. The passion's there, the options are there. You could talk for days about why they're awesome and what you can do with them.
So I'm going to go one last question and then we'll open up to everybody else. And you each kind of chimed in a little bit, but where did you get kind of the funding and like the initial startup kind of costs? Where did those funds come from?
So I'll go, Coralie, just because mine's pretty easy with the co-op community spaces. I mean, we wrote that grant and I don't know if I don't know that you'd be too hard pressed to write a grant for funding right now for community gardens. There is a lot for sustainable food, growing your own food, knowing where your food comes from. There's so many benefits. Grant stated all of them. You could basically take his presentation and roll it into a grant application. Done. So that's where ours came from. We are looking to expand. I think it's through Tree Canada. There's a grant program. there's another space beyond our gardens before the park, and we thought a fruit park would be a really good idea. We were like, a fruit park would be a really good idea, and they were like, but would it, with all the apples and berries all over? But I think that they would get picked up and cleaned off enough. We just have to, we're trying to wrap our heads around how to figure out the garden plot to pay for, and I think our community for the most part knows that now, they've been there long enough, but the fruit park would be free. So you wouldn't want people to be like an apple, a handful of berries, and a cucumber, because the cucumbers are actually a person's garden. But I think that would just come down to signage and letting your community know that's. So yeah, co-op community spaces, and we will fundraise for the rest.
So we were very blessed to be given the land for free, the fencing for free, the water for free in our new expanded space, and the city pretty much just paid for the rest. I think I got $1,000 grant from someone, but again, we saw lots of value. But there are, just like Shannon said, a lot of funding opportunities out there. Just be prepared. You need to apply for those funding opportunities a good year in advance. And prior to applying for those, such as the co-op spaces, you need to have your ducks in a row. You need to know where it's going, the sizes, all the costs, everything like that. So I just give you guys a heads up that if you're looking for funding, you're a year in advance minimum, because you almost need to start doing something with them this fall, because depending if you've got a late thaw, you might not be able to prep that land in time for you to be able to even plant next year. So just, it could be almost a 2-year project. So just be prepared for that. It was funny when Grant was talking about the trees, and, you know, you could plant a poplar or this pretty ornamental, or you could plant an apple tree. And that's my whole philosophy. If I'm going to plant a tree, I want some use out of it. I'm very excited, and Grant might slap my hand for this, but I saw that Costco has a 4 different fruit grafted tree. So I'm really hoping they're going to be in Saskatoon, because I'm very excited. I don't have a big space. So I was like, man, if I can get 4 fruits off of 1 tree, like, this is like the thing.
Me and Coralie go for the biggest bang for a buck always.
Right, exactly. And that's actually one of the ways, talking about like a fruit park or a U-pick kind of space, that's one of the ways that I'm hoping to really convince my community that the space is beneficial, by also planting some fruit trees in it that people can come and pick, or raspberries or cherries or whatever it is. So I'm just really trying to make this community see how much it is a community within a community, and so important for our community. So yeah, I can't remember what the original question was, but I just
That's okay. It was on grants, but it all,
oh yeah,
it all
okay, yeah, we didn't get any, but we've been looking at them.
Yeah.
So, but
so yeah, I'll chime in. There's one other really great grant, the SPRA framework grants, or Parks for All grants. They're both passed right now, but as the gals were saying, if you start kind of putting together all your information now, those will come out again in kind of March, April-ish, I think they are. But there we go. We got a thumbs up from Dallas. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm gonna open up the floor to any other kind of questions. I know between the 2 presentations, we've really covered a lot of the kind of the mental, the physical, the everythings. And so I'd even love, like, I'm going to murder your name here, Vesna, I'm sorry, but I'd love to hear kind of what your project is about and how things are going there.
Mute myself, right? Hello, Vesna Fa from North Attleford. I'm running a Midwest Food Resources. So we're running fresh food box, cooking classes, preserving, canning. We have 3 huge communities, so altogether about 2 acres that we cultivate. Our plots are quite bigger, about 40 by 25. Then we have a huge community garden that supports all 3 gardens. So we go to farmers market, put our produce into the fresh food boxes, and that's how we raise money for all 3 gardens. And the 3rd garden is completely for donations. So we partner with BRT6, BRT6, Kids First, White House, Food Bank, and then surpluses are donated.
That's awesome. Yeah. Any Grant, I see you unmuted yourself. Did you have a question or a comment to chime in?
No, I thought Coralie and Shannon, your presentations were excellent. I thought that was superb. And I'm going to send you, one of my students was from Melfort, and he designed a fruit park as part of my course. That was one of the requirements. And now I just have to go through about 200 and some odd files to find his name and to find his project. That's exactly it. If you plant things, the community, prove to them, dwarf U of S sour cherries, put in a bunch and sign it as to when they're mature, because as soon as they turn red, they're not mature.
Yeah.
You have to wait a little bit longer. And then, please take a gallon, that's all, and then share it with everybody in the community. And people will, they'll love it.
Yeah, I love. I think. What are the chances that wound up like that? This could be my ticket to our fruit park. I'm very excited.
Yeah. I just have to find the file first, though.
No panic.
Yeah.
We had a little side chat going on, Stephanie and I. The community of Bruno has a Bruno Cherry Festival. And it's all picked from their community, and they celebrate with pies and crafts. Yep. And it's amazing how things like that can bring communities together, not only with food, but through kind of those festival and arts.
Yeah. I mean, the whole multicultural communities, and the more you encourage that, the better off, because that just brings everybody in, because everyone's interested in food and learning English as an additional language. That was the other big part that we're working on. When you're learning English, it's now let's talk religion, not really a safe topic. Let's talk gender, not really a safe topic. Let's talk tomatoes. Yep,
safe topic. Yep, safe topic.
Exactly, and everyone grows them. But then, I mean, colleagues from Ukraine coming here. When we were in Ukraine, you've got four types of tomatoes. That's it. Here, you've got a seed catalog with 7 pages of 10 cultivars per page. Yeah. And they're going like, what's the difference? They're confused. I mean, so that's where the sharing knowledge, experience, that works just wonderful.
Food is the common language. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, we all eat and we can all grow food. And it becomes a super common ground that we can all get on. And it's the perfect way to meet and interact.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the Portulaca Doll Festival. I'm the purslane.
When you said that, I was like, I can eat purslane. Are you serious?
Serious? Before it flowers. Eat it before it flowers.
Amaranth too. I'm like, wait a minute. I've grown amaranth like in a cut flower garden, but I can eat amaranth.
You can't eat amaranth. Go to the seed catalogs and you can get colored amaranth, multicolored leaves, or you can do the big tall red amaranth. And I forget the name of the dish. It's a South Indian dish. And it's very, very tasty. You can substitute beet leaves for it too.
Well, actually, and coming back to Communities in Bloom, we have so many planters that we plant every year. I think was it last year or the year before? We actually started introducing, because you can buy vegetables in a 6-pack of flowers for really cheap, and they grow really big, and then they have a dual purpose. And so we started putting things like, we would put celeries in the middle of our planters because the tops of the stalks are wonderful, or chard. Lettuce is terrific. And then they became part of these middle of downtown beautiful floral displays. And after the judges came, we were like, food for everyone. Like, the lettuce out of there. It was wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the students got married, and for her wedding bouquet, it was a flowering kale.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful flowering kale. And then near the halfway through the ceremony, it's he's chewing on this kale, and the crowd just goes wild, But hey, she's a horticulture person, that's what we do,
Absolutely.
I think that's perfect.
Love it.
I was remembering the last time we had Grant on the call, we also had Dean from Over the Hill Orchard, and he showed us, it was like a presentation on gardening, but using those bags that you had mentioned, Coralie, like the kind of little green bags that you can carry around. And I just thought that was a wonderful idea to give them to kids as part of kits to like a grow a salad kit or a grow a farm kit, and even in like seniors homes on little balconies and stuff like that. I think it's just such that gardens, the idea behind gardening, like I grew up on a farm, live on a farm, and I have this massive plot because I think that I have to have it as full as I can get it. But yeah, if you make it more attainable and more to suit your setting and the settings around you, I think that gardening can be so powerful for people and communities. So
community gardens, though, that's what they are, right? They are a manageable plot size. And you
Yeah.
don't have to create it. You can just walk up to it and it is ready for seeds and love. And when you grow something, it's the best feeling.
Yeah.
The other thing we're doing this year is we've created a garden contest
Yeah.
because we want to celebrate the gardens in people's homes. And it's important to show how many people are doing things and the great work that they're doing. Because through Communities in Bloom, Miracle Grow gave those signs. You could get 12 signs for your community. So we get on that. So we're doing everything from vegetable gardens to ornamental gardens. And we're even doing awards for fairy gardens and container gardens, because those are important as well. Not everybody has a big piece of land. So we're kind of going to celebrate that this year. So we're super excited for that new contest.
Melfort might be stealing that idea, Coralie. I think I seen like a poster or posting briefly and I was like, well, that is brilliant.
I'll send you all my deets.
Atta girl, love it. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we've got about 3 minutes if anybody else feels like chiming in. And I know now we're all hungry and antsy to go outside and go have a forest bath and
I know.
hide from the wind maybe in my neck of the woods, but
I'm going to go try and hit golf balls in a forest in this wind this afternoon. So it's going to be great. Aileen, I think the one thing is if anybody has any questions or reaches out to you, because I know it's Friday, so there's probably a lot that maybe wanted to hop on that couldn't. I'm accessible and I'm sure Coralie is too, like at any time to spread the wealth of information.
Perfect. I'll include your emails in
for sure.
Awesome. Bonnie, do you have anything to chime in? You're just like grinning ear to ear. You're so happy with it because I think you've got some great programming happening up in Rivers West with older adults and gardening and.
Yeah, 5 greenhouse tours and planting there. They fill up so quickly, right? That's the only downside, which isn't really, right? Yeah, and when you talk about community co-ops, community spaces, you know, the mineral tubs. As a farmer, we've got mineral tubs just, you know, in our yard. How many of them? And I have them planted all around my garden, and I put the vines in there, right, so they don't take over the garden. But I think there's a opportunity for something bigger there because it's recycling, and we've touched on that in private conversations, and we'll see where that goes for next year. But thank you, everybody. Great job.
The one other thing that we do here in Warman is we actually do talking about seniors, we do seniors bus trips. So we take them here in May. They're going to go to Wilson's greenhouse. So they go as a group, and then we're going to go to the berry barn as well. So that's just something else that's not necessarily the hands in the dirt, but just encouraging that community sense and getting those seniors out. For those that don't have the accessibility, we're given the transportation and we take them on a bus, and
that's a mental wellness trip
and come home. So
good girl. That's a mental wellness thing, Coralie. It's so important. Yeah.
One comment about containers, if you buy any tree from a tree nursery, you get a free container.
Yes.
Those 2, 3, 4 gallon containers, the cheap black plastic things that are kind of ugly. But when you put a whole bunch of them together, they were very effective for growing cucumbers, peppers, tomatoes. Yeah, I grow all the ones on the side on the driveway, and that way there's no heat actually on the driveway whatsoever. Reflection back onto the house, chills the house, reduce the temperature of the house, and you get 200 or 300 pounds of tomatoes.
Yeah, tomatoes aren't fussy. They love those containers. I grow them in there every year. You do not need a bed in the ground. You can do them right on your deck. It's wonderful.
Yeah, put an advertisement. Starving student wants to grow some of their own food. If you have containers, please contact, and you'll get tons of them.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, everybody, for taking your Friday afternoon to spend with us. And I hope your heart is full, because I know mine is. And we will touch base later and look for it. I'm not sure if I'll get to it today, but early next week, I'll send out all those follow-up documents from the girls and a copy of this recording so you can share it with folks as well. And those participating from the Rivers West District and Prairie Central, Bonnie and I will connect with you afterwards because you'll be entered in to win a prize for your attendance today. So we'll touch base with you on that one too.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Ann. Take
Thanks,
care,
guys.
everyone.
Have a
Yeah,
great
see you
weekend.
guys. Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Ooh, a pumpkin festival. That sounds fun.
We'll stop recording, right?
Mm-hmm.